off.
I can't end the stream though, because that's what screwed us up before.
Okay. Can you pause it?
I don't think so.
All right.
I need to find a way to switch the camera. You don't have access to this feature. That's the same thing that happened before.
All right. Details.
And Alex,
Yes.
we have a veteran whose report tells us he would like to make a few comments if it'll.
How are you?
Oh, hi.
I'm Bill
Nice to
O'Neill.
meet you. Hi.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
I was just telling her, I'm an Agent Orange survivor, and I'd love
Oh,
to
okay.
say a few words on behalf of the Veterans County officers. Would that
Okay.
be okay?
This is Tim. Ask him. It's his show.
Hi, how you doing? Tim, I'm Bill O'Neill. How are you, sir? I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm sorry. We're having a technical issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Are you giving me access?
I'm trying. No, you should have access. I'm in there trying to change it over to camera.
After you're done or during,
Not
I'd like
doing
to
it.
say a few words on behalf of the veterans organizations and what can be done. So, don't
I
be intrude.
don't know.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
It says you're
My
live.
son is an Iraq veteran and he's 100% disabled.
Options. Title description, shareable link.
Get any connection to
So
any
it's a
exposure?
little-
Any exposure?
I don't think so because he was a low risk on C-130. I don't know.
There it is.
Yeah, but it's not through the camera. That's the problem we're having.
Oh, it's to his screen?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
All right, let me see if there's
is it a
always
connection over there?
what I was supposed to do.
Maybe?
Ron, is the camera on?
It's set up for it. Yes,
Yeah, but it's not on.
it's on.
Okay, well, okay, is it something on the camera?
Do you have another USB port?
No, I didn't bring anything else because
Okay,
you
just
have
check.
all the stuff.
Well, we have this one.
It took me 25 years to get my certificate.
Okay, can you unplug it and then plug it back in?
Yeah, well, they said there's no way.
That did something.
You're supposed to, so it's making me sick.
Are you a burn barrel person?
Yeah. And, yeah, I even have data for,
All right, we're still getting you on that video.
But I guess the worst can be worse, could you turn on the laptop and use the camera that way?
We could, like, if I pause it, so
Hang on.
And that is, I'm sure you know.
okay.
well, yeah, I filed papers.
All right.
Did you pause it?
And,
Shoot.
then one day I was doing some research about, I gotta find something.
Connection, live schedule.
And there was a study done by.
We'll have to do like what we did before.
All right, well, I have it paused right now.
Doesn't say it's paused on my end.
It's, oh, there you are.
And that's what I was
You,
saying. So I was like, "Dad, look on my phone. I was like, "Okay." So,
um,
I got that when I was asked to.
I have it.
Yeah, this says that I'm live. You've paused it only for you.
okay. I don't want to end the stream. Can you use the microphone from the camera or
I
do
don't know.
this? Record on the camera and use that, but use the, just do them both so I can edit it.
That's fine.
Okay, are we ready?
I think so.
Okay.
Just so, we had to punch. We're gonna record it on the separate camera and then that. For some reason it's not using our regular camera. But it will be selected. All right. Would you like the introduction?
Absolutely.
Okay, now did you want to go back or before?
Totally your choice. I'm here for the afternoon.
Okay.
All right.
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 Higher Supreme Court justice. Okay. Welcome, everyone, to our talk today on politicians' games for our veterans' lives. I'm your host, and today we have actually a special pop-in. It is Mr. Bill O'Neill, who is a retired Supreme Court justice. He's going to talk to us about different veterans services organizations, the organizations out there, and then we will have our guest speaker, Mr. Tim Hauser. So let's hear it for Mr. Bill O'Neill.
Good afternoon. I see we don't have a microphone. Can you hear me okay? Good. My name is Bill O'Neill, and I'm here to listen more than to talk. But as I was driving down here, I realized there's a message I have to deliver, and only I can deliver. And that's the truth. I was just telling our guest speaker, when Grandma and Grandpa founded our family back in 1919, it started growing. There's now 350 O'Neills. That's how large our family is. And I'm here to tell you, veterans and friends of veterans, of those 350 people, I'm the only one that has a heart condition. You know, and I had a heart attack back in, I think, 2006, something like that. Nobody ever suggested that based upon my Vietnam service, anything was amiss. And more importantly, this is very important to me. I never applied for benefits. You know, I'm retired from the Ohio National Guard, including service right here in Ravenna at the Armory. I was the commander up in Painesville. But more importantly, to me, I had a massive heart attack in 2006. I was brought back to life by the Cleveland Clinic. They did a good job. I can now walk 3 miles in 1 hour. I can shoot 52 on 9 holes. I'm in great health. But more importantly, my health care comes from the Veterans Administration right here in Ravenna, Ohio. And I got to tell you, I hope no one in this room is making the mistake that I made. I didn't apply for benefits, and one day I found myself up in Chardon, and I'm sitting there with a veterans service officer by the name of Michelle. She was just a doll. And she's looking at me and she says, "You have heart disease, you're a Vietnam veteran, you were exposed to Agent Orange. Why haven't we met?" And I'm just sitting there and I'm saying, "Because I didn't need you. I was a judge on the Court of Appeals. I had good health insurance. Nobody ever told me anything about Agent Orange." And I'm here to, I hope somebody hears me. When I signed up for the Army in 1967, I raised my hand and I said, I will defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They said, "That's a deal, you're on." And I stayed there. It took me 30 years to get 20 good ones, but I stayed on. But more importantly, at that time, and this is important to you, Tim, it's important to everybody, at the time I signed up, never in my wildest dreams did I think that the Air Force was going to equip C-130s as a crop duster and spray all of us with Roundup. We just never thought that would happen, and that's what the government did to us. So fast forward, the clinic takes care of me. I file for claims, I file for benefits, and more to the point, I was approved almost instantaneously because of the heart condition and the Agent Orange. And Michelle, God love her, she says, "You do understand that if you had applied 10 years earlier, we would have started paying you 10 years earlier." So, you know, from the date of application with the Veterans administration is when they consider you to be ready to go. So if anybody here is a veteran or a family member of a veteran and they have not gone to the Veterans Service Office right here in Ravenna, please do it. I beg you, please do it. Even if it's a sniffle, you don't have to have a heart attack for the VA to pick you up. Now, last thing, and this is just something I have to say, and maybe somebody will like it, somebody won't. All of my regular care comes from the Veterans Administration in Ravenna, Ohio. I go to the clinic right here, and the reality is they want to see my blood quite frequently. They're looking for blood, and never once have I been in that facility for more than 15 minutes from the time I arrive to the time that I leave. I'm also a registered nurse. I know high quality when I see it. This place is great. If we're reading the newspapers, if you leave with one thought, I'm hearing that our members of Congress and the President of the United States are talking about trimming things in the Veterans Administration. That means, in my opinion, my clinic right here in Ravenna. That's what it means to me. So I'm so glad you're all here, because the more knowledge we have, the more effective we can have. My name is Bill O'Neill. I'm a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, and I'm glad to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing today? Good to see some folks out here. My name is Tim Hauser. Former Senator John Tester from Montana gave me the nickname the Gulf War Advocate, and that seems to have taken off around here lately. I've been holding rallies throughout the state in support of VA employees at VA facilities. And to start off, I served in Operation Desert Storm, which means I was deployed to Saudi Arabia, and they had us start burning garbage, unused ammunition, medical supplies, medicines even. And on top of that, the Iraqi army decided to set all their oil wells on fire. So we were exposed, double exposed, so to say, with a lot of different toxins. For 25 years, I fought with the VA saying that my illnesses, and the main illness that I have is called constrictive bronchiolitis, which means my lungs don't work very well. And it's not going to get any better. And who knows what's going to happen to me here in the future. But for 25 years, I fought with the VA, saying my illnesses are to what I was exposed to. Sent them all kinds of articles along with my medical records saying, look, this is what we had to breathe every day. And the VA kept telling me there's no scientific proof saying that what you breathe is what made you sick. One day I was doing some more research because I was getting ready to file again because I had another appeal denied. And I came across an article written by several U.S. doctors. One of them used to work at Cleveland Clinic. And they noticed there was an extreme increase in cancers and respiratory diseases amongst the residents of Dahran, Saudi Arabia. And that's where I was stationed at. And their conclusion was us burning garbage and the oil well fires. So I finally got my claim approved. And as my wife and I were sitting at our kitchen table crying because finally something positive had happened, we posted on Facebook. And within a couple hours, somebody I do not know, or my wife knew, messaged me and said, call me. Sent another message with his phone number. And the next message was, It'll change your life. So my wife searched on Facebook for the individual's profile and found out he was an Air Force veteran himself. And he had served in Enduring Freedom and was stationed over in the Middle East as well. So my wife decided, what's he going to do? Stalk you? So give him a call. So I did. And he said, we're asking you to come join us in Washington, D.C. to fight for a bill called the PACT Act, which ended up being officially named after Heath Robinson, which was in Ohio Army Guard, who was exposed to toxins while he served over in Afghanistan and Iraq. And said, we need you in Washington, D.C. So my wife looked at me and she said, all right. And got off the phone with him, and about 10 minutes later, another man calls me and says, hey, we need you in Washington, D.C. And I said, well, who am I speaking with? He goes, my name is John Stewart. I was like, John Stewart, you talking to the comedian? He says, yes. I'm fighting for you guys, and I need your help. And I says, well, there's one problem. I'm on oxygen, and I don't have a portable oxygen concentrator. Well, I don't know if you all have heard of a man named John Field. He, Army veteran himself, and when he came home, he found work at Ground Zero from 9/11. Well, not only was he hurt, but he's also sick due to what he was breathing at Ground Zero. So he fought for the first responders for 9/11 to get health care for them. And he called me as well. Since us first responders are backing you guys, we're going to help you, but we need you to come help us help you. So within 2 days, a firefighter from New York City donated a portable oxygen concentrator to me so I could go to Washington, D.C. And fighting for the PACT Act was something I never even dreamed of doing, because we'll get to that here in a little bit. But in the course of many Zoom meetings with congressmen, senators, White House staff, and actually going to Washington, D.C. and meeting these individuals in person, there was only one conclusion, was that there were many people who didn't want to see this bill get passed. And it passed the House of Representatives and went on to the Senate, and there they decided that they were going to hold a meeting at the Veterans Affairs Committee prior to sending the bill to the floor. And there's where I met Senator Sherrod Brown, Senator Bernie Sanders, and then VA Secretary Dennis McDonough. And the Secretary of the VA, Dennis McDonough, at that time was saying there was no scientific proof that what we were exposed to was making us sick. So he could not see this bill passing because it was going to force him to do something that the VA didn't believe in. Well, after several meetings with the VA Secretary, veterans such as myself were able to convince him that what we were breathing over there is what caused our illnesses and our diseases. And he then started to fight for the bill as well. But one dreadful night, the Senate voted the bill down. And as we were wondering what happened, because we were in D.C. that night to celebrate the next morning the passage of the bill, because we thought we had the votes. Well, then former Senator Tomey from Pennsylvania said, well, there's a problem with the budget. You can't create a budget like this to fund this. It's illegal, unconstitutional. Come to find out that everything about the budget was fine. It was legal. But the reason he did this was because he didn't want the bill to pass to begin with. So he got a bunch of senators involved, and they decided to vote no. And at that time, Senator Ted Cruz decided to start high-fiving everybody that said no to the bill. Of course, that made us mad. And we were getting a lot of pushback from fellow veterans who were saying, hey, I need this bill. What are you folks going to do? Well, after our press conference the next morning, a bunch of us got together and we decided to hold what we called Fire Watch. Many started sleeping on the steps of the Capitol building to bring awareness to what just happened. I was there, but I couldn't sleep on the steps. I needed, a place to charge my concentrator, and with my health problems, there's no way I could have slept out in those heats and thunderstorms that everybody else was. So we were finally able to convince Senator Chuck Schumer to go ahead and present the bill on the floor again for at least one more vote. One of the people that was contesting this was Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. And the reason I'm bringing him up was because he stated that the reason he was going to vote no on the bill was because all veterans lie about their illnesses and only want to file claims with the VA to get free money. Well, once he said that, thousands of people showed up at the Capitol building. All veterans and spouses of veterans. They finally said, enough is enough. You made a promise to us when we signed up. We signed a blank check to you saying we would sacrifice our life for this country. And in return, if we survived, you would take care of us health-wise. So when the second vote on the bill happened, it passed. And all those Republicans that voted no on it ended up retiring, such as Ohio Senator Rob Portman. And still today, he blames me for his forced retirement. Thank God. Because he said the reason he voted no was because there wasn't enough Ohio veterans sick to warrant this bill. Well, when we gave him a list of 8,000 Ohio soldiers, sailors, Marines, and Air Forcemen, the only thing he could say was, I'm announcing my retirement. No apology, no nothing. He just said, I'm going to retire. Well, the reason I'm bringing all this up is because what's happening today is very shameful. Today's VA Secretary Doug Collins, when he was confirmed, decided that he was going to start firing VA employees. He wanted to go back to his 2019 staffing levels. Now, in 2019, well, the reason he said he was going to do this was to streamline the VA to improve wait times. Now, what wait times are is from the day you make your appointment with the doctor to the day you actually get to see the doctor. That's your wait time. It's not sitting in a waiting room, wait that day. It's from the time your appointment is scheduled to when they can actually get you in to see the doctor. Well, in 2019, the wait times at the VA were the longest in history. It took months in order to see your primary care doctor, even longer to see a specialty care doctor, such as a pulmonologist, cardiologist. And here's the saddest part. It could take up to over a year to get to see somebody in mental health. And then they wonder why there's so many veterans committing suicide. So when he announced that he was going to start firing these people, we started holding rallies here in the state of Ohio at VA facilities. We didn't state any derogatory statements about anybody, except we called out Secretary Collins to do a better job than what he was doing, and that he was throwing his fellow veterans under the bus. What we did is we showed our support for VA employees and veterans that use the VA. Because showing support for our VA employees meant that we care about them just as much as they care about us. VA employees dedicate themselves to taking care of veterans, and many of them are veterans themselves. So when they get out of the service and were medics or nurses or doctors in the military, they come to the VA because they want to continue with their oath that they took when they joined the military. So we're holding these rallies, and VA employees start showing up, join us at these rallies. So what does Secretary Doug Collins do? He says, if you join these rallies, you're going to be fired. You're going to be terminated. So he took away their First Amendment right of free speech. And as we continued with these rallies, veterans are not veterans, but VA employees are calling me up. They're messaging me, and they're saying, Tim, things are getting bad. You're making us fill out an email every Monday on 5 points we did the week before. If we don't fill it out, they're walking people out. Then, as we started protesting that email went to from having 5 points, what they did the week before, to now you have to suggest how the VA can save money. If you do not put a suggestion in once a week, you're going to be terminated, you're going to be walked out. So now they're messaging me saying, Tim, we're scared. We don't know what's going to happen. So we continued the pressure, and then he announced that he was not going to fire 83,000 people all at once, that he was going to use attrition to get to the staffing levels that he wants. And what that means is if somebody retires or quits, they're just not going to fill that position anymore. As this is going on, he's saying nurses and doctors are exempt from this, social workers are exempt. So the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee called him in for another hearing a few months ago. And I'm watching, and Bernie Sanders caught my attention. Because he goes to the secretary, he goes, Tim, he goes to, Doug, he goes, Doug, you sent some numbers in, and I want to go over those numbers with you. You said we are 6,600 nurses shorthanded today, and this was just a few months ago. Secretary Collins agreed. He says, you said we are 3,600 doctors shorthanded, and he agreed. And he says, you say you're critically shorthanded on social workers and mental health, but you don't give a number. He says, yeah, we're at critical levels right now. So Bernie Sanders goes, so in your personal opinion, do you believe that these shortages are hurting veterans from getting quality and timely health care. And Doug Collins says, yes, that is my personal opinion. And Bernie Sanders asked him, then why the hell do you want to fire 83,000 employees for? Well, they're not nurses, they're not doctors. So then somebody else, I forget who, a couple days later says, we understand that you've got a workforce that's starting to leave on their own, quitting. He says, yes, they are, and we're not replacing them. And they go, well, what's happening? He says, well, we're losing 3,000 nurses, 2,000 doctors, and we just lost 1,500 social workers at this month alone. They're walking out because they can no longer take the harassment that they're going through at the VA. Now, when he mentioned that, they asked him too. He says, well, we understand you formed a task force to look into this. He says, no, I didn't form a task force for this. I formed a task force to look into the anti-Christian bias that's going on at the VA. So when I heard that, I started emailing his office like crazy, asking him, what is anti-Christian bias? Because as far as I know, every VA hospital I've ever walked into, has a chapel. That chapel is set up for every denomination of Christianity that there is. From being a Catholic down to a Protestant to a Lutheran. It's all there. But there's no place for Muslims, Buddhists, or even people who follow Hindu. There's nothing for them at all. So where's this anti-Christian bias coming from? His office has failed to respond to my emails on this, and I don't think they ever will. Matter of fact, he's been asked by the Senate and the House of Representatives to explain what this is, and he won't answer. Then he said that they want each VA facility has their own set of bylaws. Ravenna has their own set of bylaws. Cleveland Wade Park has their own set of bylaws. Akron VA Clinic has its own set of bylaws. And he wanted them all to change their bylaws to include the exclusion of protections for sexual identification, sexual gender, sexual preferences, and marital status. So when he was confronted with this, he says, that's their choice. I'm not telling them to do that. But he is the head of the VA, so why is he not putting out protections for these individuals? Because many veterans are part of the LGBTQ community. And they just lost their crisis line. And also, I got to go back a little bit. When they voted on the continuous resolution to keep the government open, and we're getting ready to go through that again right now. But when they voted on that, and Chuck Schumer agreed to go ahead and get it passed, they cut the budget for the PACT Act by over $20 billion. Now, with our protests, many congressmen and many senators said they heard what we were doing, and they knew they needed to put that money back in. So when they finally passed a legit budget for 2026, they put most of that money back into the PACT Act. But it was because people like you who spoke up and made your voices heard. And that's what's needed now. With them shutting down the crisis line for other communities other than veterans. But they made cuts to the crisis line for veterans. And what they did is they closed the call centers where these counselors worked at. Many of them even worked at home. And the government had to go in to approve where they worked at, that HIPAA laws were being followed. Well, when they closed these call centers and called everybody back in from home to work in the office, they put them all in one room. And it's still that way today. And many veterans say when they call, they can hear other conversations going on. So they know Pam in Florida is having a crisis because she was sexually abused while she was in the military. Or Joe up in Montana is complaining because he can't get to see a VA doctor because they're closing rural hospitals in Montana. And he's thinking about taking his own life because if the government don't care about him, who does? So if they can hear other conversations going on, how are they going to be able to trust that they're getting the proper care for themselves? Now, I got a law passed here in Ohio last year designating September 22nd as Veteran Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day. Other states have their Veteran Suicide Day, but it's not September 22nd. But we're trying to make this day a national day. So when I contacted Collins' office on this, I got a reply back saying we don't need a day like this. And I even started emailing President Biden on this, but I got a reply back from him shortly before the election saying, Tim, we've run out of time because all my executive orders have to go through a legal process first before I can sign them. They have to be approved by constitutional lawyers, and that takes months before I can sign an executive order. It's something that can't be done overnight. This day's needed, but we're out of time. So I kept that email going to President Trump. And I got a letter back from him about a month ago. And what it stated was, thanks for the great idea. Continue to support me as I bring in the golden age to America, and proud to have you as a mega. I'm not mega. I'm just a very concerned veteran that's scared that we're going to lose all our benefits. Because one clue about what's going on at the VA was stated by an individual who's running for governor for the state of Ohio. Hopefully I can pronounce his last name right. But Vivek Ramaswamy, when he was with Elon Musk on Doge, at his very first press conference, he says, I am going to close down the VA and I'm going to close it down today. The veterans spoke up. Spouses spoke up. Family members spoke up. And it was noticed, and he was fired from Doge. But that doesn't mean that they're not trying to close down the VA. With the harassment that VA employees are getting, like I said, they're quitting in droves. They can no longer take being harassed. They know they can get a job with even more pay at other hospitals. And when I mentioned wait times, one of the things that Secretary Doug Collins keeps refusing to state and acknowledge was in December of last year, when the report came out, the VA had the shortest wait times of any hospital system in this country. Cleveland Wade Park was rated the #1 best hospital in the country, not just the VA, but in the country. One of the reasons why it's one of the best hospitals in the country is because of the work it did with developing new technology for prostheses, the research it did for toxic exposure illnesses, the research it did for cancers, and the research it was doing for mental illness associated with military sexual trauma. All that research was stopped back in April. So there's no research going on with toxic exposure illnesses, except at the Cleveland Clinic, but the Cleveland Clinic lost its federal funding for that. So now they're hoping they get enough donors to keep that going on. Matter of fact, I just had an appointment with them here recently, and it took me 6 months to get in and see a doctor. So much for trying to improve wait times at the VA, because Cleveland Clinic took 6 months to get me in, where, it takes me, I can call right now, and I guarantee you I can have an appointment with my primary care doctor next week, my pulmonologist and cardiologist and gastro, probably in about 8 to 10 days at the most. Now, if they were to close the VA hospitals, this is going to affect everybody in the country, because all the other hospitals are also understaffed and overworked, and there's way too many patients. And because of the cuts that they're making to Medicaid, rural hospitals are closing. So now you take the veteran population that utilizes the VA and put them into the private sector, you're talking millions of people dumping into a system that's already not working for you. Now that means we'll have to get insurance. A lot of us don't have insurance because we get our health care through the VA. We don't need insurance. Once you reach a certain level of service connection, you don't have to pay a dime at the VA. Below that, yes, you do have to pay them. It's not free until you reach a certain level of service connection. But taking away the VA is going to create a crisis throughout this country, because they're allowing pre-existing conditions to be a system that the healthcare insurance companies can utilize again. So what does that mean for veterans? We all have got pre-existing conditions. When I go and hold these rallies at these VA clinics, it seems each rally gets bigger and bigger. And it's not normal average citizens that are coming. It's actually veterans that actually voted for this administration that we have now. But they're changing their views because they're losing what was promised to them, and they're finally waking up. We had, at the first rally I held, we had about a dozen people or so come. Congresswoman Chantel Brown showed up out of nowhere to support us. Then we went to Parma. Instead of just 12 people, we had 250, all veterans. Congressman Max Miller decided not to show up. But you know who did? Chantel Brown. The staff for Amelia Sykes showed up. The mayor of Parma came. And 250 veterans. From there, we went down to Akron. Akron is an extremely small clinic, and it's on an extremely busy road. Instead of 250, we had at least 500 people show up. The mayor of Akron showed up. Congresswoman Amelia Sykes showed up. State Representative Casey Weinstein's staff showed up. And these are people that are helping veterans keep their benefits. Because there's one fact that I haven't mentioned yet is with Medicaid, there are 2 million veterans in this country that are on Medicaid right now. So when these cuts to Medicaid start to take place, what's going to happen with these veterans? Are they going to lose their Medicaid? Because this is how they're paying for their care at the VA. Then when they shut down the VA and they're not going to have Medicaid anymore, how are they going to get insurance in order to go to like the Cleveland Clinic or university hospitals or that little rural hospital in Sandusky, Ohio? How are they going to afford health care? Because if they're on Medicaid, that means they're close to being destitute. Now, when I got that law passed designating September 22nd, Veteran Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day, we're starting to get noticed nationwide. And the state here has been challenged to do better. The state of Ohio has the 6th largest veteran population in the country, but yet we are ranked number 3 as far as veteran suicide rates go. Number 3 is not a good number. That means you got one of the highest suicide rates in the country. So when I talked to my state representative, Christina Rogner, about that, and I showed her statistics about what Ohio has done in the past and what it can do to improve. I also showed her statistics from the state of California. The state of California has over 1 million more veterans than Ohio does. It has the largest population of veterans in the country. But here's the difference between Ohio and California. California has the lowest veteran suicide rate in the country. So she asked me, what are they doing different than we're not doing here in Ohio? The governor's office of suicide prevention gets out into the public. They go to communities and educate the people on suicide prevention, warning signs, and resources available for those in crisis, especially veterans. If a veteran is in crisis, it was I forget the individual's name, but it was a representative from California that got what's called the Compact Act passed. What the Compact Act is if a veteran is in crisis and they feel like they're going to commit suicide, they can go to any emergency room in the country, state that, hey, I'm thinking about killing myself. Regardless if they're in the VA or not, the VA will pay for 30 days inpatient, 90 days outpatient care for that individual. that is being looked at as being taken away from us. That act saves lives. The crisis line saves lives. But now it's starting to become a burden on veterans because veterans can hear other veterans talking about their problems. So what I'm asking is for everybody in this country to take notice, speak up. Everybody's voice matters. I'm living proof. I'm just a nobody veteran from Twinsburg, Ohio, who got asked to go to Washington, D.C. to get a law passed. Then after that, I asked my state representative, hey, we need this law passed in our state. And she agreed, and it got passed. So voices matter. Your votes matter. So if you're concerned about what's going on in this country, please, even though it's been out of the limelight for a while now, there are changes happening at the VA, and they're not good changes. We need people to start speaking up for other veterans, because I'll admit it, and the veterans in this room will admit it, and even online will probably admit it themselves, is we are probably the most stubborn people in this country. We don't like to talk about what we've gone through. We don't like to talk about our service that much. When people thank us for our service, we say thank you and we move on, or you're welcome and move on. We don't talk about ourselves, and that's the problem. So we, as a community, are asking you to please join us as we try to make sure that veterans' benefits are not taken away from us. Thank you. I'm sorry that took so long.
Oh, you're good. Anyone have any questions? Yes.
Well, it's still active, but the current administration has voiced opinions on it, saying that it's overkill, that they want to go ahead and get rid of the presumptive illnesses that are associated with it. And what that is if you have a certain illness and you served in a certain area under combat, then it's presumed that that illness is from your service in that area. So they have to approve your claim. So that's what the PACT Act is all about. And they want to, and what they're saying is presumptives are illegal, and they want to go ahead and get rid of the presumptive part of the PACT Act, which that's what the entire bill is about.
But presumptives have worked from the Vietnam with Agent Orange as well. Well, before the PACT Act, are they going to try to not?
No. If it wasn't for the PACT Act, the presumptives associated with Agent Orange would not have been covered. Matter of fact, they weren't covered up until the PACT Act passed. And that was the very first presumptives, the day they signed the bill, went into effect, were the ones for Agent Orange. And then shortly thereafter, they started expediting. The PACT Act was supposed to take 15 years to fully cover everybody, but within 6 months, everything, it was, I wouldn't say rushed, but expedited, because they knew that was going to actually save lives if they go ahead and start allowing people to file claims for the war that they were in. Because us Desert Storm veterans weren't supposed to get our benefits for like 10 years after the bill passed, but within a month. Secretary McDonough and President Biden says, no, we need to go ahead and implement everything in the bill today. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that I ran into recently was Casey Winston's town hall, they're talking about support for the budget. The state going to have to include that $600 million for the new state round. One of the people there asked about like what they said that this budget was not only because education, because it's Medicaid, because it's for veterans in the state of Ohio in order to pay for this new stadium. And yet, what's the reason for that? And there's schemes for, oh, well, the economic benefit from this new stadium will be worth it in the end. Being a veteran for yourself. Is that honestly worth this?
No. Part of what the VA did is they cut federal funding to all state-run veterans nursing homes. The money that the state is going to use, part of the money that they're going to use for that was to cover the losses that the federal government wasn't going to cover. So it's hurting veterans at the state level nursing homes. So, and that's one thing that they need to go ahead and admit, because it's going to come out sooner or later when they start. There's 2 nursing homes in the state of Ohio, and I was already told by several state congressmen, state senators that with the federal cuts, they don't know how they're going to be able to afford to keep those open. And then they want to channel money to stadium instead of to the nursing homes. So, that's it.
Again, thank you for coming. I was a Desert Storm veteran as well, and I've been benefited from the PACT Act. I'm 100% safe. I benefit from the PACT Act. I understand everything that you said happened. Also, I do work still. I'm a recruiter for nursing, and I can attest to most of my new hires from nursing are people running from the VA system. That's most of my hires. And that sad to say, I can't leave there, I'm running from that system. Tell me what it is. But one thing I wanted to just say is, like I was having breakfast with 3 gentlemen, they're older citizens, and they, I just want to know, how is it easier for us to spread this type of information to make it more, the more, tangible, more easy to disseminate, to make it more feasible, let people know, hey, Robinson Memorial Hospital is going to close if Medicare is not fully funded out there. Let the wrong people get in there, get these cuts in here. You're going to have to go to Cleveland to go for emergency, or you can't go to Akron, or who's doing what? You got, just like you just mentioned, you got David Ramaswamy. He threatened to cut the VA. And veterans vote Republican all the time. And just by him having Trump's endorsement, they might blindly vote for him, knowing that he set those statements.
Yes.
Every Democrat should be leading with that statement. They've been saying it all the time.
I'm in a little argument with my family right now because they're scared for my safety. Because Secretary Collins is, I guess he's named me at some of his press conferences and me speaking out against it. Which means, his boss. See, that's one thing I forgot to mention is the VA doesn't belong to President Trump. The VA does not belong to Secretary Doug Collins. It belongs to us veterans. And we need to speak up to protect what's ours. And one of the things that we need to do is, such as that speech Ramaswamy stated where he wants to close the VA. That needs to get more airtime. That needs to get put out by Ohioans, because one of the things that he would be able to do as the governor of the state, shut down those nursing homes. Yes.
May I answer something? In answer to your question, you caught me and talked about senior citizens. I am one.
I'm the oldest guy in the room, I guarantee you that. However, this picture is bigger than the VA. Because as I said, I'm a registered nurse that works in an ER, and everybody here, I'm sure knows, if you are injured or seriously ill, and if you show up at an ER, you get treated without regard to whether or not you have insurance. A majority of the people who show up in the ER without insurance gets paid by Medicaid. Medicaid picks it up, and when Medicaid stops picking that up, hospitals like Robinson Memorial will be on the chopping block. Because that's just what's going to happen. And you say we have to speak up. I was keeping my mouth shut for a while. The congressman from this district, David Joyce, voted to reduce Medicaid by $800 billion to fund tax cuts for the rich. So, you know, this revolution that's coming is bigger than the VA. But thank God you're taking the leadership role.
Speaking of Dave Joyce,
Well, wait.
this is how misinformation got started. He was speaking out against the PACT. And shortly after I was asked to advocate for it, I ended up in the hospital. And I already had a Zoom meeting scheduled with him. And during that Zoom meeting, he stated that there were no plans to cut any benefits or anything for veterans, and they weren't going to look into cutting funding for the VA at all. Little did he know, I had 2 doctors and like 5 nurses in my hospital room at that time, and they all called him on and they said, "You want to see the letter we just got the other day?" And this is coming from you guys up in Washington, D.C., saying you're going to cut the budget by this much. And so he went from saying no on the PACT Act to saying yes, but now he's fighting to get it cut. So, but yeah, to fight the misinformation that's coming out of Washington, it's going to take everybody. Everybody's going to have to speak up. I'm going to have to start holding rallies again. My wife made me take a break because of my health. Plus, I got a big event tomorrow in Cleveland. It's called Rally Against Suicide. It's a non-political event because it's designed to save lives. We decided to include other organizations that are not veteran associated, such as the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, NAMI. The Cleveland Cavaliers have supported me ever since I've done that, so they're involved with it as well. But with them cutting the crisis line out for other communities, such as the gay and lesbian community, the LGBT, I get tongue-tied with that. I'm sorry, folks, but we decided to include everybody this year. And instead of having like five organizations, we got 20 organizations. This is how we're going to stop the misinformation. Because the media is going to show up, the media is going to hear us talk. People are going to say, wait a minute, I need to start researching this because what they're saying, this is affecting them personally. It's not affecting my elected politician, my elected officials. I need to check this. And that's what's been happening since we've been holding these rallies at VA clinics. Veterans are researching. They're saying, wow, they did say they want to go. Wow, he did say that if a VA employee does not turn somebody in for anti-Christian bias, that they're going to be terminated. Oh my God, out of the 2,400 VA employees that have already been fired, 30% of them are brothers and sisters. They're our fellow veterans. In fact, the VA has the highest rate of veteran employees than any other federal government agency. And the ones that are being fired, they're speaking up. What's the hospital they're working at now going to say? They're not going to, because everything they're saying is true about what's going on at the VA. So when they speak up and veterans hear them, then the veteran says, yeah, let me look into that. And when they find that what they're saying is true, then that veteran comes and joins us. I'm not trying to build like an army, but we do need other veterans across the country speaking up. They're starting to hold rallies in Maryland. California's had some. Kansas actually had a huge one not too long ago because veterans there researched about Medicaid. A lot of them in Kansas are on Medicaid and they have to go to a rural hospital, but that rural hospital is actually been shut down because they're not going to get that funding anymore. So they're speaking out, saying, well, you're going to close my hospital down even though I'm a veteran. Where am I going to go now? Because I can't travel 200 miles to the closest VA for me. But yet you promised that hospitals would be built. In fact, you're trying to take that away from us as well. Because I guarantee you, if they pass a law stating that presumptive illnesses in the VA are illegal, you might as well kiss the PACT Act goodbye.
That urban that laws has stated that they're going to start using AI in terms of, for their Medicaid system. How do you think that's going to affect?
I'm definitely afraid of AI. There's a lot of misinformation being generated by AI. As a matter of fact, what they've done, what the VA is trying to do with the AI is instead of sending, they shut down physicals for claims now. And they're going to let AI decide if you are service connection or not. And once they that your illness or your injuries were caused due to your service to the country. And to have a computer decide that is, I think, it's wrong, because I don't know, I just think computers telling me what to do, period, is wrong. I should be the one telling the computer what to do. And for them to rely on a computer to tell them if I'm sick or not from my service, I don't see that working, because they've cut contracts to companies that were performing these physicals. Many of them were veteran-owned companies. So that put a burden on the claims process. And now they sent out a letter, and my connections in the claims department sent me screenshots of the email that they got stating not to schedule any more physicals. But that's the only way to actually determine the percentage that the veteran should get. So I don't see AI working in that way in a positive manner.
Having done those evaluations, most of the time when I'm going back through the records, I'm looking at handwritten notes from people in World War II, Korea, Vietnam. And unless you take the time to actually go through those notes of when the people were in service, you do not get the full picture of what's going on. The number of times I've reevaluated somebody who had it clearly spelled out in the written notes and had been rejected multiple times because they said there was no connection, it has to be, probably 20 out of I've done probably about 200 to 300 of these. Any person who we ignore means that they're not getting the money, means they're not getting the care, means that their health and their mental health are at risk. And that's unconscionable.
Let me add to that if I may. In Chagrin Falls, we had a fair and we solicited all veterans to come see us, and we had the veteran service people with us. It was fun. We had 100 people, and one guy showed up that had been stationed in Nevada during the atomic bomb testing in World War II. And he had some conditions, and obviously he was a very old guy. But Michelle was there, and she says, you need to apply. You just need to apply. We have no idea where this is going. You need, that's one message I have to say to everybody today. You need to apply.
You just brought up something that I should be talking about too, because I was asked by a group of Air Force veterans that were stationed out at the Nevada nuclear testing and training site. Everyone that was stationed out there is sick with plutonium poisoning. They're all dying. They can't get into the VA because DOD says where they were stationed at in Nevada doesn't exist because it's a top secret base. So if the base doesn't exist, they don't exist. So how can they apply for VA benefits? But here's the catch. All the civilians that worked out there are getting free health insurance, and their dependents are getting free health insurance through the Department of Energy. But yet the veterans can't even get into the VA at all because that base is top secret, doesn't exist. So how do they exist? And with the way things are going, they've been working on this bill for about 3 years now, and it's yet to have a vote. It should have had at least one vote by now.
And the veterans are aging out.
Yes, you're dying. Yes. Yes. Every day, more and more. And we're not talking like one a day. We're talking several. And we're not talking just enlisted numbers either. We're talking the base commanders. We're talking, matter of fact, I think one of the individuals who just passed a few months ago was a 2-star general who just happened to go out there periodically to check on people's well-being and to go fly a MiG. Because that's where a lot of Air Force pilots get trained to fight MiG jets. Is, believe it or not, the United States actually owns multiple MiGs, Russian MiGs, and that's where they train our pilots to fly against those planes. Those pilots are sick. Those pilots are dying. And when I was talking with these folks, I came across an individual who happened to be at the base I was last stationed at, George Air Force Base in California. And as we were having a Zoom meeting, he put up on the screen a document that he had that dated back, I forget, it was shortly thereafter they tested the nukes before they bombed Japan. They knew how contaminated the area was. So they tried to scrape all the dirt up, put it in barrels, and they buried a lot of them out at George Air Force Base. They got the documents from the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy that they buried these barrels out at that base. They buried it on top of the water supply for the base. No liners, no nothing, just metal drums shoved in the ground. So what happens to metal? It rusts, it corrodes, it turns back into dust. What happens to the radioactive material that's in there? It gets down into the water. So a lot of those folks that were stationed at George Air Force Base are fighting too. And I don't see any positive conclusion to what's for their situation because what's going on in Washington, D.C. today. A lot of it was also buried at Edwards Air Force Base. Edwards Air Force Base is still active. Fort Lejeune, which is covered under the PACT Act, still sending people to serve there. So,
What was it like to confront Marino?
oh, the Republican Party of Ohio held a party for Bernie Marino in Strongfield. And this was shortly after they voted on the continuance resolution, which took money away from the PACT Act. So I snuck in and got in line to ask him a question. And I asked him how he felt about taking benefits away from veterans when he voted for the continuance resolution. And he asked, well, what did I take away? I said, you defunded the PACT Act by over $20 billion. So what do you think is going to happen? We're going to lose benefits because of that. He went into chastising Sherrod Brown. He went into chastising illegal immigrants. And then he called me a liar and a few other choice words. And that's when a group of veterans circled around me because the room was getting pretty hostile at that time. And one whispered in my ear, says, we got to get you out of here. I says, why? Am I in danger? He says, probably, but we have your back. And then when they got me outside, I asked, why'd you help me out in there? Because you voted for this man. He says, you just caught him in a lie. We didn't know about the budget cuts to the PACT Act. Because of that, I resumed my education to people on using congress.gov. This is where you can look up every single bill. You can read it word for word. You can see who signs on as co-sponsors for the bill. You can see who's the person who's submitting the bill. You can see what committees it's been in. You can see the vote history on it. It's an extremely important tool. You can actually look up your elected officials' voting history on any topic. So I'm going to just call his name out because he's been in Congress for a while from Ohio. Jim Jordan, who voted no on the PACT Act. If you put him into Congress.gov for his voting history on veterans issues, you'll see every single time he votes no. Unless it doesn't cost any money. If it's to name a highway after a veteran, if it's in Ohio, he'll vote yes. If it's not in Ohio, he votes no. Rob Portman was the same way. When we researched his voting history on veterans issues, he voted no all the time. It wasn't because an infrastructure bill got passed and he wanted to play a dirty joke on Democrats. He just flat out voted no on veterans issues time and time again. That's one of the reasons why he's no longer serving up there in Washington, D.C. Now, I know I've kind of picked on Republicans a bit. There are Democrats, too, that vote no on veterans issues from time to time. But not as much as the people that I mentioned. Matter of fact, Bernie Marino, every veterans issue that's hit the floor so far since he's been elected, he's voted no. Every single one. Same with Kuski. He's voted no every single time. I know I'm sounding like a political campaigner here, but this is stuff that people need to know. And that's why I educate people on how to use Congress.gov. If you want to know what bills are coming up associated with veterans, you type in veterans issues or just veterans. Every single bill, Senate and the House of Representatives will come up. You click on the number, It'll bring up all the information you need to know about that bill. Word for word, you can read what's in that bill. And that's what I told the crowd when Bernie Moreno was going off, that look it up on Congress.gov. Here's the bill number. This is what he just voted for, and y'all are applauding him for. But if you look, it's taking money away from you. So when they did that, they realized this is an important tool that every single American needs to know how to use. Because there's no lies on that website. He tried to say when it was brought up at a different town hall, thing he held, he decried that Democrats run Congress.gov, but no, it's the clerk. It's the clerk from each house, and the clerk from each house is sworn to be non-biased. If they show any favoritism to one side or the other, they get fired. So when that individual's putting that information into Congress.gov, you know it's 100% true. And that's why I'm asking everybody to learn how to use it.
Any suggestions for us moving forward?
Keep your eyes peeled on social media for next rallies at VA facilities, because they will be coming up again, and I hope I'll see you all there.
Thank you. And as a shameless plug, he has the person who created the Veterans Assurance
Network.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And you can find him easily on the web, and it notes what they do. So if you want to go and help people outside of the government, he's one example of how to do that. With the government cutting things, we've got to start taking care of each other, or continue to do so. But thank you very much for your
Thank
time,
you.
and we appreciate this.
We're gonna have, a recording for a YouTube video, so they're gonna post that, she'll post that up on the website, so if anybody wants access to that, so they can share it, review it, go over. I have the information, you can just click the QR code, and it'll be up there, and, please share the information, and so that they'll review it and use it.
You want me to end it?
Yeah. Well, I can.
Yeah, better if you do, because I don't know how to get back to where I was.
Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful day.
Really, they're mine.
Okay, so I'll bring it back.
Yeah, it's the fight.